Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images. For my paying work, I'm an architectural photographer, and now I do a lot of testing of lenses and various things as well. And recently I tested the Laowa 17mm wide-angle lens, ultra-wide-angle lens, because it's on a Fuji GFX100S. That gives a very wide view. Now, I've produced a video of this, quite a long video, and as part of that video there was a chunk of it all about how I approach photographing subjects for my architectural work. Several people have said to me they only discovered this by accident because it's a long video and they happened to have enough time to watch it all the way through, and that they thought probably a lot of people would never ever catch it. So what I'm going to do is repeat the section of the 17mm review which covers how I approach taking architectural photos. Now, the site in this is De Montfort University here in Leicester. This photograph was taken with a shift lens. This was taken with a 17mm shift lens on a full frame camera. That's a Canon 5DS. Now, this is 17mm as well, would give you a wider view, but it's not a shift lens. So with the problem with this, you get converging verticals. That's why I use shift lenses a lot. But I do use ordinary lenses as well. So I'm just going to cut through into the part of the video where I'm talking about how I used this to photograph aspects of this building. Now, the particular part of the building where it's one that I've only been through a couple of times before, and it actually covers, this was an existing building and this section was built onto it. That means that the floors are at different levels here to what they are in this building. There's quite an oldish building that's retrofitted, so there is a complex interface between the two buildings, and it was a space that I wanted to explore. Now, I will at some point go back and do a more thorough exploration of this, looking at the different angles and things, but this was just looking at it using one lens. Sometimes it's useful to force yourself just to use a single lens to have a look and explore a space. If you've got other lenses, you can go back, but that depends on your approach to doing it. So that's this bit of building here, behind there where the junction is, where there's lift shafts and all kinds of things for that. But anyway, this is looking at using this lens, taking those photos. So this is in the, I'm here in the School of Architecture, in the Architecture Department, which is most of this off here. This would be at f8, and you can see I focus on the distance, and at f8 I've got quite a lot of detail here. You do get a lot of detail. If you stop down on this with wide angle like this, you've got a lot of depth of field. It's not pin sharp, but it doesn't really matter because you're tending to look down here anyway. So that's this is where the two buildings jut against each other and the floors don't quite meet. This means there's quite a complex of lifts and things. Now, the bit I had walked through this bit before I'm going to show, but this is a bit that is not normally, I don't normally go through, and I'd forgotten about. And I thought, oh, I've got this lens, I'll take it, I'll go there and I'll explore just some ideas how I would take some pictures if I'm looking at it. Now, in a real job, a paying job, for example, I would have a collection of lenses. I wouldn't go along with just one lens and just force myself to use one lens, but it can be useful, and it's one of the reasons why when I test lenses I usually get just one lens to test, because otherwise if I take 2 or 3 lenses I may have a favorite for something. It's much easier to go out and test just the one lens and force yourself to use it. So there we go, camera's level here, hence why the lines, vertical lines, are nice and straight. So let's go to this place. Now, this is on the ground floor. The old building, reception, is through to one in the distance there. You can see the small staircase, which gives you an indication already of changing levels. This is looking through there. This is a level camera. So we've got this area here where you would come in, go through. This is part of the reception area here. Once you go up above it, it starts getting a bit more mixed. Now, this is looking up. Now, immediately, because I'm looking up, I've got lines running all over the place. Now, you may decide that this actually works for the image you're trying to show. And I will take, if I'm doing an architectural project, I will take a set of shots like this. Now this one also shows, you can see the sun stars of showing on one of the light sources here, but I will take this. So there's reception down there, and this is looking up towards where the different floors are. You can see the big numbers on the wall indicating which floor is where. So this was looking up there. Now I'll just go up there. This is now up on that level. Here is that little staircase, and here's where the shots I was just taken was down here. This is one of the big numbers on the wall here, and we've got, now I'm into this section here, we've got a big open area, and let's see, we're going to have a look at that. There we go. I'm now looking up. Now, with any shots like this, how you set your lines and how you do various angles and things is entirely up to you, obviously, but it's worthwhile sometimes just with wide angle lenses taking, and I'll show some examples in a bit of this, of just taking several shots at different angles to get a feel for what works. Now I'm looking up here, I've got mixed lighting, so I've had to process this afterwards, careful with the white balance here, because I've got some artificial lighting which is leaving a slight pinkish tone, and I've got daylight coming through the skylight at the top here, so that's looking up there. Now if I move up, I've now come up a level, and here we are in the area, the open area, where these are the floors that go through to the building. This is the one with the brown stripy front on it that you've seen on that. We've got some vertical skylights here which make some sort of vertical windows, and skylights at the top, the whole lot. You know, it's a matter of deciding how it looks. Would I take a shot like this normally? I might well do. The way I generally approach a space like this is, first of all, just have a walk around it, see how it works. If there are people in it, how do the people use it? How we have a feel of the space if possible. Ideally, I want to explore the space before I even think about taking photos, so I have a perception of what the space is and how it's used. Now, this one, I'm one hand behind my back because I've decided I'm just using this one lens. So it means that some of these are not necessarily optimal, but yeah, that gives a nice feel for the space, the height of it, and these little balconies here. There we go, it's looking around the other direction, and you can see now the numbers, and you can see how the floor numbers don't match up. Interestingly enough, these lifts here, if you get into this particular set of lifts here, they are lifts that open two directions. So you've got a vast great panel of lift buttons with 2, 3, 3A, 4, 4A, 5, you know. I'm assuming that, that an awful lot of people come out of lift doors here, look around and realise they don't realise quite where they are and go up or walk up the stairs perhaps even. But that's looking up that way. You can see the degree show was on at the time, so there's quite a few sort of displays and things here. This is the architectural workshop, model making workshop. There's a big printer in there as well. But so we look at that. I'm now looking upwards directly. Now, once again, how you set those lines, those diagonal lines and things, and how you put stuff in, it's a matter of just deciding what works. Do I like the fact that this bit of pipe work runs here? Does it matter? Not necessarily. It has a fairly, the skylight at the top has given it a fairly central look. Now, I've gone up to the top. If I was taking shots for, there's a limit to how many I'm going to do doing this, I would have visited each of these spots here and see what it looks. Because over on this, there's the big glass walls here, and there are sort of seminar rooms, lecture places over on this side as well. But we've got this here, so that's the look looking down on it. Now, there's a space you can see through here. That's not the ground floor, that's the first floor I was on. And then you can just see below that is the actual ground floor where I started. And there we go. There's a slightly different angle, but this time I've waited until there were some people walking through it. Having people walking through like this gives a much better sense of scale. Now, if I was doing this, as I say, on a job, what else might I have? I might well have taken this shot, but I'd probably be using a tripod, and I might well have taken this at, let's say, half a second exposure to blur these people and give a bit of movement. Now, you can't see any of these people. They're either being viewed from above, or there's somebody who's viewed from behind here walking along. If there were more people in it, I might choose a longer exposure just to blur them. But you do have to be careful when you're photographing groups of people, blurring them by a longer exposure, in that you get the lost foot effect. Now, when you walk, during part of your stride, one foot is relatively stationary for a while the other foot comes up and travels across. That means that if your exposure, if you take a picture of a crowd of, let's say, a half second or a second exposure, you will get lots of blur because people are moving. But you will get isolated feet where somebody just happens to have plonked the foot down on the ground at the start of the exposure, and your exposure goes through, and they just lift it off towards the... So most of the exposure, that foot is stationary. Now, the leg and the rest of the body may be blurred, but you end up with just isolated feet. Something to be wary of if you're just taking pictures of people on a longer exposure to blur the people. Here, it's just ordinary, it's handheld shot looking down there. So, a slightly different view. I'm not sure which ones work. On a real job, I would go through, I would cull the ones that I think are absolutely awful, just don't work compositionally or otherwise. I do not think heavily about every single picture. I will take some pictures just because I think, yeah, that works. That picture up there on the wall, that print, that's an example of one I walked by and I thought, yeah, that works. Just one shot I took of that. Took a few other shots walking around. That's the one that worked. That's the one that the architects who built that particular building are also the architects for this particular building here. And I took quite a lot of photos for their website and publicity as well. But that's a slightly different view looking down there, as is that. Now, it's one of those things you decide, does that work better or does that work better? Well, I think maybe that one works better. But this is one of the bits I do about the architectural photography, is that, yes, I've gone here and just used this one lens. Now, I quite often will go round and take a load of pictures of a building using a particular lens. I may then change the lens and go round and take another set of pictures. I may repeat that process. Very rarely do I go to one spot and take the picture with different lenses at the same time. It's a matter of thinking, what am I using here? How am I presenting this space? It's whatever works for you. When I have all the pictures done, as I said, I will cull the obvious bad ones, but I will leave a collection of views in it. I've found, and this is something you check before with clients, how many pictures are they expecting? If they're expecting 4 pictures, and they say we want 4 pictures, and they say which 4 pictures they want, I will give them 4 pictures and then probably say, I've got a few similar ones if you want to look at some different angles, slightly different angles. If they say we'd just like a load of pictures of the building so we can use them as and when, we don't know what we're going to use them for, that's when I would take a mix of pictures with this. Nice dead straight pictures. I would take probably pictures from each of these little balconies here. I'd take pictures around. I'd take lots of pictures for it, and I'd supply lots. Very rarely have I come away from a job thinking I took too many pictures. Architectural photography is, to me, like landscape photography, and has to have a bit of spontaneity about it. Yes, there are planned shots, there are pictures when you think, yes, I'm going to take this, I'm going to set this one up, I know what the lighting I want, I know where I want the sun to be, various things like that. That's part and parcel of it. But there is an element of just walking around and just looking at somewhere, and you cannot beat just actually walking around the space and thinking, that's an interesting view. Then when you come back, you think, right, yes, that is an interesting view. But actually, if I move a couple of foot to one side, I've got an even better looking view. Now, if I can't decide whether this is better, or this is better. I don't make that decision when I'm taking the photos. I'll take 2 photos and then decide afterwards which is the better. It's not like I've got rolls of film that I've got to pay for processing and stuff like that. It doesn't cost me any extra, maybe a little bit of time sorting things out, but I'd much rather have enough pictures and be able to give a good set of images to a client. And yeah, some of these I wouldn't bother, some of these I would, but that's typical of what I would do for taking pictures. And it's just using the Laowa 17. Now, I hope that's been of interest. If you've got any questions, let me know. I'm quite keen to do more videos of this style if people are interested in them. Who knows, I might even take the video camera outdoors with me and attempt to do that, but that has some technical constraints, which it's much more difficult to do that well than it is in a space like this. But anyway, if you've got any information, have a look at if you want information about this lens, have a look at the actual review of it. I'll put a link in the notes, but yeah, it's a nice lens. It's a rectilinear lens. It's a very wide lens. Does it have a use for this? Yes, it does have some use for this, even if I do prefer using shift lens. And Laowa produce shift lenses as well for this. So there you have it, Laowa 17mm, about looking at a building. Hope it's been of interest. Please do subscribe to the channel if you find it interesting. That's much appreciated. So thanks for watching.